Okay, I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. It looks like we'll have John pulling in shortly and Lisa joining us via Zoom, I think. 6:30. Nice to see everyone. Welcome. Up first is our consent agenda. We have our prior minutes from the October meeting as well as a number of policies, both first and second read policies. Any discussion about the policies, questions, concerns? So I'll make a motion then to accept the consent agenda. We'll do that by roll. Miranda?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Arlene?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye. All right. Lynn, any need to reprioritize the flow of the meeting?
No.
Okay, great. So that brings us to our public comments and visitors opportunity to do public comment. It looks like we have a couple of people here, both in person, and I see 2 people in the virtual realm. Courtney, are they interested in public comment or just here to listen in?
I asked one person and they have not answered yet,
Okay,
so they might not have seen it.
So maybe if you start in the room, they can
Okay.
text Courtney if they want
all
to.
right. So, I'm happy to have you all participate in public comment. How it generally works is we allow like about 3 minutes per person, just in the interest of us. We have a big agenda tonight for the meeting, and you're of course welcome to stay for the duration if you're interested in that. But generally, if we can have about 3 minutes of comment per person, and just a reminder that it's not an opportunity there's not a back and forth with the boards. Certainly if concerns are raised that the board needs to take up, we will absolutely do that and can follow up at a later date.
Thanks, I made sure to read the rules on your website.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate you being here, and if you don't mind telling me your name again.
I'm Sarah Stewart, no H on Sarah, STEW. And I'm a Berkshire parent.
Okay.
Where do you want me? I would prefer to be able to address you so I can see you all.
Really, wherever you're
Is
most
that fine?
comfortable, head of the table
Would you like
is
to
totally
let
fine,
you-
although,
I would, if that's okay, I'm just gonna be, I came prepared. So this is my child, this is why I'm here tonight. And thank you for the school pictures today, that was timed well. So thank you to the member of the board for your service to our community and also for having me speak. I am a member of the Berkshire community. I'm a property owner, taxpayer, business owner, and I'm also a professional with a 25-year career in corporate America, primarily making my career around solving complex problems for our organization. I have a child that is currently enrolled in Berkshire Elementary who is in 5th grade, and she's 10 years old. And she's been sustaining consistent harassment, teasing, bullying, and recently reported physical altercation at school. And I've been working for the last 3 years through the school around this. And one thing to note is my child started reporting suicidal thoughts starting at the age of 7 while enrolled at Berkshire Elementary. My child is she's a quarter black. She is queer. She is also identifies as non-binary, and she has ADHD and autism, as do I, and we both have extremely high IQs. So what comes with ADHD and autism is a lot of issues with social emotional skill relationships. It also sometimes with ADHD includes issues with focus and attention in classrooms and disruptive behavior, as well as the inability to focus on schoolwork, particularly ADHD children struggle with learning how to read. One thing you might not all be aware of is trauma, and this is as identified in the Psychology Today as well as the American Psychiatric Association in children often displays in a child as if it was ADHD or other diagnoses, and includes things like poor grades, hyperactivity, issues with reading, stomach aches, headaches, bedwetting, crying, suicidal ideation. And what is important for me to highlight here is today our Berkshire Elementary School has an average of 30% of our students are at grade level or above. That's extremely low. And we do have a Title I plan to get that average to 50% by the end of the year, but I still think that's a failing grade. A huge part of our community coming out of COVID and our global community is reported as having a mental health, as being a mental health crisis for America. 9 out of 10 US adults believe that we're in a mental health crisis right now. Some information that's reported on the Vermont Department of Health annual suicide report you might be interested in knowing. The percentage of high school students who've attempted suicide has significantly increased since 2009. Female high school students are almost twice as likely to attempt suicide than male high school students. In Vermont, people living in rural areas were almost 2 times more likely to die by suicide than people living in urban areas. BIPOC youth were almost twice as likely to attempt suicide than white youth. 67% of people who died by suicide were not currently receiving any mental health treatment. And in 2023, there were 506 suicide-related ER visits for children under the age of 14. So this is a big issue, and I come to you today with solutions. I have spent the last 4 years as part of my own diagnostic journey of being diagnosed as ADHD and autistic. As a special interest, researching absolutely everything I can find on ADHD and autism. I am a breadth of information, and I am no longer willing to just sit by and work with the school when it's a combination of multiple things. I don't think the children are necessarily at fault. I think all of our kids are at risk right now, and a lot of our adult community members as well. We need as a community to start looking at supporting our kids both from a literacy perspective but a mental health perspective. While in Portland, Oregon, where I started my family, I volunteered with 2 programs supporting youth. One was called SMART, Start Making a Reader Today. It was volunteer driven, and it was a program where volunteers come into the school for 1 hour a week. And during that time, they sit with 2 youth who are struggling to learn to read one-on-one. The children pick out the books from the library. They sit down one-on-one with the adult in the environment, and they practice reading together for 30 minutes. And the majority of children who are struggling with reading also struggle because they don't have a reading parent at home or a parent that has the luxury of time to sit down and work with their child. Also, there is a gap in our level of education in the community. I happen to be lucky enough, I was the first person in my family to go to college, but I can tell you that was not an easy venture. And academics wasn't easy for me. I dropped out of school in 5th grade at 10 years old because I was getting into physical altercations almost daily because I was being teased. Because when you're autistic, you do not relate to other children in the same way that neurotypical or autistic children do. I also volunteered in the Big Sisters program of America and mentored a child who was struggling in all grades academically, and after 3 years of volunteering with this child, she graduated with an international baccalaureate advanced degree in high school and then went on to graduate undergraduate in Northern Washington and is now studying her master's degree in Austria and Poland. I think that there are a lot of volunteers, just based on talking to other mothers in the community, who are ready and willing to mobilize to support our students and our community that are untapped. And I think a lot of that is relating to the fact that the teachers are overtaxed, underpaid, and undersupported. And that has nothing to do with this community. It's just the nature of this country we live in. And unfortunately, that means we need more support. So I'm also recommending we consider the idea of either a volunteer or paid volunteer coordinator that can work with teachers when they provide, I need this or that, organize the work, organize volunteers with similar skill sets, and align volunteers. I'm not sure on how much time I have. I don't want to go over, but I did print out a lot of information and resources to leave for the board. And I have a lot more ideas. I'm meeting with Michelle Irish next week to talk about DE&I supports, as they currently do not have a plan for supporting neurodiversity in our community. And I'm going to continue to work with Mr. Roddy, who's done a phenomenal job making adjustments with his staff and his team, but he's one person. So I am going to take my kid out of school as soon as I am able to in my divorce proceedings and do homeschool, because I cannot have my child talking about killing herself. And my child's not struggling academically. As a matter of fact, she's often finishing her work early. She comes home asking for additional work because there is no gifted program. There is no supports to children who are above, because we're struggling to keep up with the volume of kids who can't even read. So please take advantage of the volunteers and the mothers in the community and the fathers in the community, and allow us to participate to help solve this problem and keep our kids from killing themselves and our community from falling behind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Feel free to leave any information with us that you'd like us to look over.
I'll leave it with Courtney. Thank you.
Appreciate
I'm not
it.
going anywhere, but thank you.
Thank you.
Did you hear back from me?
Michelle, I live in Montgomery, I have a couple of kids here just observing tonight.
Okay, great, thank you.
Erica Shagnon said she wanted to talk.
And how about virtually? Who's
So
interested in speaking?
Emily said she's just watching.
Okay,
Erica, are you interested in speaking for public comment? She didn't answer, and then Caroline, she just came on, so I have to message her.
okay. Is that Caroline from Berkshire?
I think
Guess
so.
Nancy Linder.
Yeah.
How do I unmute? Erica said.
She has to. I can ask her to unmute.
Oh, hello?
She
Can you hear me?
Yes,
did
I
it.
can.
Okay, sorry, I don't know how this works. This is my first time.
No worries. So Erica, I'm not sure if you heard my introduction. We'd like to try to keep comments to about 3 minutes, if that is comfortable for you. And
Yes, that's totally fine.
Okay.
Mine's kind of quick. I have a student, I have one in Montgomery and I have one at Enosburg High School. But my concern tonight is the one about Enosburg High School. I'm really concerned about the math program. Right now it's just, they only have semesters, so it's half a year. And last year she had her her freshman year, she had math. And then her second semester, she had no math. So from the second semester, she had no math and all through summer. And luckily she had math this semester, but if she hadn't had math until next semester, that's potentially one whole year without math. And that really concerns me, because I feel that these kids need to be in math all year long.
Erica,
So I just wanted to address that concern. I did address it with the counselors last year, but I didn't I didn't know about the school board and me being able to speak out. So I just wanted to address the issue that I feel that math should be all year long, not just semester blocks, and potentially some of the kids are not gonna have math for an entire year.
Erica, I appreciate you bringing that concern. It's Lynn. That this board doesn't govern anything related to the high schools. So
Okay.
if you want, I could bring that concern to the ER board, or you're welcome
Okay.
to join us. Our meeting is
Next Tuesday.
next Tuesday at Richford Elementary School at 6:00.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know.
Oh, it's
I'm sorry, I
okay.
apologize.
No apologies needed at all.
We just let me know if you want me to share that on your behalf.
Yes, or I can try and make it there. You said it's
Okay.
at 6:00 at Richford?
Yes.
There's also
Okay.
there will also be a Zoom option, just like this meeting as well.
Okay, I'll make an effort to try and be there. I just wanted to address my concern about it, so thank you, and I apologize for interrupting.
No
Oh, no
worries at
problem.
all. Thank you so much, Erica.
Oh, can I just add one thing? I was listening to the lady before us talking, and I do wish that we did support gifted and talented programs. I know the support may not always be there, but for the elementary level and middle school level, I do strongly support a gifted and talented program if it is available.
Thank you for your thoughts. Appreciate it, Erica.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course. Courtney, anyone else? I see we now have Dan O'Rourke also.
Yes, and I am not sure if he wants to speak.
Oh, is this,
My son.
oh, okay. And, what about Carolyn?
She is just here to listen.
Just here to listen. And you asked Dan if he is speaking?
He just came on. No.
Why don't we,
Oh, he unmuted.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I was just here, basically, I was trying to make it, I wasn't able to make it up to the meeting for concern with the talk about ASP in Bakersfield and just, what that's gonna entail tonight when you guys cover it.
Yeah, we plan to have a conversation tonight about that, in just a little bit, Dan. Did you have any particular comments you wanted to share? Because when we're having that discussion, that's just gonna be a board and an admin discussion on ASP.
Yeah, so let me, so some of the biggest things with it is, I'm kind of wondering, what the burden is on the district, because it doesn't seem like much, and I know at least as far as what the cost of it is for a family is nowhere near the cost of childcare in the state of Vermont right now. So it kind of concerns me that we're full, in Bakersfield, the program is full, and why we're not trying to expand the programs for more families by cutting it when we save, like, I think it's about $26,000 a year annually right now for the cost of childcare. And if you do the ASP program, every single day that's not a weekend, it would cost you $7,000 to pay for your kid to go for the entire day. And why we wouldn't, especially in Bakersfield right now, we're a Title I school, so we're already in a low-income area, why we wouldn't look to push programs like that, like cutting them out because they're using the facilities, I'm not sure. Really, I just wanted to listen to see what stress we're putting on the schools and the school faculty and staff that we wouldn't want to offer a program like that in the school.
Yeah, we'll be addressing all those questions during the ASP discussion.
Okay, sounds good. I look
Okay.
forward to it.
Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to the school spotlight with Sandy.
Timing me?
No, it's just
That was Kevin.
That was Kevin.
I definitely will, I know this will be shorter than Kevin's, for sure.
Oh.
He told me, I wasn't there, he's the one that told me.
You missed a good one.
welcome everyone to Montgomery Elementary School. I am a little bit hoarse tonight, so I apologize if I crackle a little bit, but my school spotlight tonight is to discuss my leadership action plan for this year. And it started at our summer leadership institute up at J.P.E.G when we were all meeting in June, and we were asked to identify an area of focus. And my area of focus is when I created my leadership action plan as my MTSS, which is the multi-tiered systems of support. We've been I think what I really wanted to do was fine tune some of the things, the pieces that we already had in place, because it wasn't all kind of gelling together. So that was where I started. Last year, we had a SIT team, which is a system improvement team. We had several of them, but one of them was geared towards MTSS. And that is kind of where all the pieces came into play. So while they were all there, they were kind of dangling together, and nothing was really into that system of accountability that we were looking for. So it was kind of not the pieces that needed to be in place first was, let's have a team and let's find a time. Because once we got that into play and stuck to our time, then we knew we'd be on a roll. So during in-service in August, I presented this to my staff. We now have a team of 5 that includes me, our guidance counselor Courtney Scarr, our reading specialist Lara Morales, our math interventionist Brittany Cook, and also our first grade teacher Emily Fleury. And Emily was the lead person in our for the MTSS SIT team last year. So Emily kind of was the one that got that ball rolling last year for us, so it seemed fitting for her to be part of our team. So that's our permanent team. And then, of course, whenever we need other teachers to come in and discuss things, that we'll bring in other people. Also, our EST meetings are scheduled, but those will be scheduled as needed, like on a Tuesday afternoon on our early release days. Okay, Courtney.
Got it. Just a minute.
We began our team meetings in September. We identified the scope of work that we needed. And, sorry. And those items are like, we needed a protocol. We needed to put it in writing so that everybody in this building understood what we were trying to achieve, when we met, what we needed them to do in preparation for the meeting, and so forth. We needed a tool that we could make it quick for us to review students on our schedule when we met on our Wednesdays. We needed communication that wasn't happening on a regular basis or consistent basis with our families regarding the MTSS system. And we needed to get our teachers on board with what's in our EduClimber system as our referral form for students needing interventions. So at a staff meeting, we introduced the EduClimber response form to teachers. Leah Belitzos is in our district, and she is willing to come out at any time. She's kind of the EduClimber guru, so she came to one of our staff meetings. Our teachers brought their computers. Everyone had to sit there and fill out a form and just get the feel of it, and realize that there's a lot of information in there once you fill out one of those response forms. Of what you have is actually a document with so much information on a child. So it was really eye-opening for our teachers to sit there and kind of get in there and play around a little bit. So then we developed our MTSS process. This is the team of 5. We sat down. We tried to be very succinct in how we wanted it to present it to our staff and make it as understandable as possible. I think that this is a piece that I think is most important for me to focus on. For the MTSS system, it's multi-tiered, but in each tier there's more than one level. So when we talk about tier 1 and levels 1 and 2, that's what's happening in the classrooms. That is where our students receive their daily instruction, and that is where they also will get a double dose or reteach of a topic, and that and that's when during reteach no new material is introduced. And if the reteach sessions are not effective a particular student or students is not achieving the expected level of learning, that's when the teacher will fill out the response form. And during our MTSS meetings, we can go in and look at these response forms and determine what needs to happen. At that point in time, if it is deemed that a student requires some intervention or could benefit from intervention, that's when we will communicate with the parents, letting them know that we're recommending that intervention for their child. And then we'll move that student to tier 2, which is for level 3 and 4A, where they start to see the interventionists on a scheduled basis. At that point in time, we will progress with the progress monitoring every so many weeks. We will be able to see it on the tool that we created, the spreadsheet for our interventionists. Each spreadsheet has a tab for each one of our people, and we also have Jeff Ward halftime as a math interventionist this year. It's his 48th year teaching, by the way, I must add that. And Jeff is also, he's supporting intervention, but he's also supporting some enrichment for some of our students as well, small group enrichment. And he's having a great time with it. I saw him doing number corner in kindergarten the other day and my heart melted. It was so cute. So the process then goes to where we just progress monitor these students that are receiving their interventions. And if those interventions are still not working, then they can also be referred for an EST plan, an educational support team plan, that puts some accommodations in place to better support that student. If the interventions work and the student is making great progress, the student can kind of graduate out of the intervention, and we'll send a letter home saying, congratulations, your child did a wonderful job. So, and same with the EST, if we recommend that, we'll invite the parents in and develop that EST plan with the parents present. So this is basically happening with my team, with 5 of us, every other Wednesday morning at 7:30. We meet 7:30 to 8:10. And we start with looking at our spreadsheet to make sure that we're keeping track of how long students have been in intervention, and we determine next steps, what next steps are necessary. So I believe that this is positively going to be holding us to a system of accountability by meeting every other Wednesday, the same group of people, analyzing the students and how long they've been in and where they need to move to next. So we're pretty excited about the fact that we've finally got it more solidified than we have had in the past. And then there are also pieces that are not quite complete yet. So we do want to make sure we're focusing on consistent documentation so that we don't lose track of anything that's happening. We also know that our interventionists need to be better about documenting what they are doing for interventions with students, and that gets documented in EduClimber. And by having all of the interventions documented in there, you get a solid picture of that student in a snapshot by opening up EduClimber, and just you can see everything that's going on with that student. And then there's this other piece that we are going to work on, and we've discussed but haven't taken it to great depth yet. But especially with the older students, we feel like they really need to understand how they are as a learner, and understand that if they're behind, it doesn't mean that they can't catch up. We want to instill the growth mindset in our students. We want them to kind of do the whole take hold of what they're doing and know that if they put some extra time in practicing their reading, that they can make a difference in themselves. We really want them to understand the why they are getting the intervention and what they can do to help be part of that team. So that's something we're pretty excited about, getting into the more of the growth mindset with our staff and our students, and trying to just push them up just a little bit more if we can. So I think that is it. Anybody have any questions for me?
That's fantastic, Sandy. I'm so thrilled to hear, because we've been having these conversations about how each of the pieces are separate but interconnected.
So
And
much so.
This is showing the interconnectedness of the work that you've been trying to work towards.
Yes, and
for
it was
these
just in
years.
pieces, and it just
Yeah.
wasn't in a cycle.
Mhm.
So now we really feel good about just getting it documented into where we know it's gonna flow.
Right.
So I think it's,
So I think that one question I would have would be about the progress monitoring and like the data. So looking at a cycle of effective intervention, when your team meets, are they coming with that data in those conversations?
they, what we're planning is to have, watching the amount of time a student, they're documenting on the form who they're seeing, what interventions they're giving them at the moment, the date they entered into the interventions. And then we have every 6 weeks at least, or 4 weeks, we're trying to determine, depending on how many students are there and how many we can get through in a Wednesday morning, as to like, if they've been in there for 4 weeks, the interventionist will guide us as to whether they switch up the intervention or something different has to happen. And then of course, down the road, there could be a special education referral if things are not.
I think that's where I was
Okay.
going with that, is that progress monitoring, the data piece of it is so important.
Yeah.
Because that's something that you'll need to
We'll
be
need
able to show
To go forward
whether
with
or
it.
not there's growth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Cindy, can you remind me, how many interventionists you have in the school?
2.5.
Okay, and they have, specific specialties?
Yes. Lara Morales is a reading specialist.
Right, of course.
Brittany Cook is our math interventionist. And Jeff Ward was a math teacher for a very long time, and he's now seeing some students, and he's going into classrooms with small groups during WIN time.
Awesome,
And he is, like I said, seeing some small groups for enrichment as well.
nice, that's great, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Excellent. Okay, so that brings us to the really fun part of the meeting, Morgan. Budget.
We've all been waiting for.
That's always the best part. So while Courtney's firing that up, 2 items on there that are just informational, still waiting on draft audits, and we are waiting on one relatively large tuition bill before I can say with any confidence where all those 9th graders have shown up and what we're looking at for the current year in terms of how good we did estimating those tuition payments. I expect I will have that one that I'm waiting through December meeting, so hopefully by then we'll have some real numbers. We'll go through the same slideshow again, a couple of new things this round. Again, we are sitting here in November, our second board meeting where we're discussing the budget. Still on target, we hope, for finalizing a budget on January 8th. One thing that is not on this list is that by December 15th, the Commission on the Future of Public Education is tasked with dropping a set of recommendations that the legislature could take up this session and impact this budget year that we're building right now. Given the makeup of the commission, I doubt there will be a unanimous recommendation coming from them. There might be 2 sets, and it will be a little bit challenging because we will be, warning our budget ideally the first week in January. We could push that off to the last week of January, but that will be before there's likely any action out of the legislature. So we're going to be trying to read the tea leaves and see where they might go and how that might affect your budgets, because we could likely be in a situation where we warn a budget and the rules change between that time and when we vote on the budget in March. So
And the warning thing is also a little bit problematic, because one of the things that we talked about was the early voting piece. You vote on town meeting, those people can vote so early that we have a really short window to get information in front of them before they actually vote. So any delay in us warning pushes that communication back, because everything is interconnected. So those recommendations turning into action for this budget are pretty problematic for just the timing of it.
Because we can't re-warn once the voting window has commenced.
I mean, not, and then still get it done on town meeting day, most likely depending on when you tried to do that, because you would then have to have your, is it 30, what's the formal for the town meeting, 30 days?
I think it's 30 to 40. And we also don't really know because this is somewhat unprecedented. The number that you are putting to the voters is an expense number, and so they don't vote on a tax rate. Things may change, but I don't believe we would be able to change that number, certainly after voting had started, which is going to be weeks before town meeting day. It's one of many things that we're going to be figuring out over the next few months. We will use this slide deck in your informational meeting, so there's some things on here that we'll blow through pretty quickly. At your annual meeting, go to the next one. We will still be electing a moderator and a clerk. That will be by ballot now with the change that the voters approved last year. Go to the next one. We do need to schedule an informational meeting, as I mentioned last meeting. Does not need a quorum of the board or clerk or moderator. We'll do that probably in January when we warn your budget. And as is your practice in the past, we'd recommend that you plan on holding some sort of meeting in each of the 4 towns, although one would have to be identified as official. At this point in the meeting, we will be electing 2 school board members, one from Bakersfield and one from Montgomery at that meeting. Probably cycle back to that at the end of the meeting. Board goals, they will be part of the presentation. We can just skip over that. We covered that last meeting. Enrollments, again, haven't changed anything for folks who maybe didn't tune in last time and are tuning in now. Just reminding folks that the statewide trends in terms of losing enrollment, student enrollment, really it's a different picture in Chittenden County and Franklin County, and we are projecting relatively flat to slight increases over the next 5 years. Some details in terms of what the enrollment is in our 4 schools. So, this year when we counted kids on October 1st, we were at 828, and we are anticipating that breaking 900 by 2027. So, again, not what the rest of the state and certainly the southern part of the state is feeling. We covered this. PCB remediation is still a question mark. No state funding for that on the horizon, and we know we have 2 schools that we have at least some level of PCBs that we need to deal with. Health insurance premiums, the increase that VHI proposed is just under 12%. So we have that number. Was talking with the folks at VHI, and we are all relieved that the number's that low, and we're all saddened that we're excited by a 12% increase. But that is much better than we were predicting. We are in negotiations with your support staff union and your teachers union for FY26, so we're going to have to make some assumptions on where those contracts will land. We would do that in executive session so that we don't tip our hand for those negotiations. I've got some initial numbers in there now, and I'm happy to go into executive session at the end of the meeting if folks want to hear that. We will be meeting with the negotiations team pretty soon, and so I'll be looking to them to do any sort of course correction if they think my numbers are going to be too low or too high. And then an increase in high school students, and we'll have some real numbers tied to that once we get those last few tuition bills in for this year. We went over the staffing changes last month. There's only one slight difference month to month, and this is something where we continue to look, and so there may be some changes, especially around paraeducators, and there's been shifts of paraeducators from the local budget to the supervisory union budget if they are going through that additional training to work with those higher needs kids. So there's likely still some movement there, but unless the board is going to give us some different direction on things like class size and how we're supporting those teachers, these numbers should be fairly static at the moment. So in Bakersfield, budget to budget change, down 2 paraeducators. In Berkshire, a little bit more of an enrichment teacher and drop of a paraeducator. Montgomery, drop of a paraeducator and lots of 1 day a week of the family engagement coordinator. And then in Sheldon, we're adding that 1 day a week of the family engagement coordinator, drop of a paraeducator. At this point, taking out the health teacher position, which remains unfilled, and proposing a half-time music teacher. The supervisory union board will be doing this level of dive in 2 weeks, so don't really have a report from them yet. But one of the things that we're trying to do is to really identify where those supervisory union staff who spend all their times in schools, where they're spending their time, and kind of sort of push that out so you get a clearer picture of who the adults are in our 4 buildings here.
And again, that I just want to say in this meeting that continues to be a misconception because a lot of those positions are held at the supervisory union level. So people still think those people work in our office. We hold those contracts and push them out based on need into those schools. So I'm going to keep saying that for anyone who's listening.
When we get to the budget vote, there's additional language that those of you who've done this for several years will remember from the past. We asked for authority to spend a certain amount of money, and then we need to put out estimates that if that budget passes, what our per pupil ed spending number will be and what that percentage change will be. So we'll work on that as we work through the later drafts of the budget, but just tipping you that second sentence is back after a COVID hiatus. I think it was three, maybe 4 years that we haven't had that. I sent you the detail of the budget and I sent you the initial recap. Both of those are similar to what we will put out on the website and the recap in the annual book that we send out. I know that that's dense. Take your time, look at it offline if you've got any questions, especially those of you who are new to the budget process. Please let me know. We will continue to tweak those numbers as we go. What you can see here on this graph is that for your budget, half of it, that half in green, are salaries and benefits. So those numbers are really set once we all decide as a board what your staffing plan is for those schools. That almost other half in light blue, almost all of that are tuition payments, which you have no control over. So if we were to back that tuition payment out, really about 75 to 80% of your budget is in staffing. So I say that because we will go back to the detail line by line through these budgets, tweak where we can, but we're not going to find any significant savings by cutting $500 out of the electricity line. It's really, if we get to December and January and we need to move this budget, it's really going to be about staffing. And as I mentioned in the email, I've met with all the principals around the staffing plans. I have not met with them yet around some of those smaller line items. That is something I will do over the next few months. And so if they go home and read them and they get angry and call me and tell me that I'm forgetting something or under budgeting something, I will totally own that as my error. And you will see something new for your next meeting. Similar to that, we've got a graph that shows what we do, and this is showing that about 3/4 is really direct instruction. So people in front of kids, whether it's your teachers or it's the teachers at those schools where you send tuition. Going around the rest of the wheel, we've got kind of section of student supports, section of teacher or staff supports, school administration. That light blue section, which is about 10% of the budget, is the central office assessment Those of you on the SU board know that that's primarily your transportation costs and then your food service costs, and then the remaining amount is kind of what people perceive central office to be. Operations and maintenance, and then a little red slice there for debt service for the debt payments on your 4 buildings. We will be getting into this in maybe December, definitely January, when we have some real numbers. Right now we've got an expense plan, but we don't know any of the other numbers that are going to your tax rates. But what I wanted to show you here is that from FY20 to FY25, the numbers and the lines on that chart are real. So you'll see the line in black with the round dots is the district level tax rate. So that's what's driven directly by the budget decisions you make and the decisions that are made in Montpelier around the yield. All 4 of our town lines in red, in blue, in gray, and in green up above are what happens to the rate after we apply the CLA. One of the changes this year in the legislature was to basically recalculate the CLA or change how the CLA is applied to tax rates. So if you go from FY25 to FY26, you'll see that the 4 colored lines are all the same. And so what I'm showing you is that if you passed a budget this year where everything was the same, and the CLAs didn't change, your tax rates at the town level would be the same. But because of that tweak that they did in the legislature, your district rate is going to look significantly higher. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to make those 2 sets of lines appear closer so that the CLA isn't the big boogeyman for the tax rate anymore. It's really spending and the yield and the number of kids. We'll have conversations about how we try to communicate this to voters. It's going to be confusing, at least to the extent we were successful at having people focus on the district tax rate. And I may be kidding myself thinking that people were ever paying attention to that. So it's potential we also may just drop it.
They were, because we spent a lot of time talking about, because we're so low spending, we were driving, by making those cuts, we were driving ourselves so close to that dollar floor. So I think it's going to be difficult to communicate about that. We know that in advance, because if they were paying attention at all, they heard us talk about the dollar floor last year.
And so one of the things you can see here is in FY25, we were at $1.07 in this district. Just the change in the CLA would put that district rate up to $1.40. So essentially what they're doing is moving everybody away from the floor, which allows all those low spending districts to cut their budgets more without hitting the floor. I'm not saying that that's the intent, but that's one of the effects of it, is that those folks that were butting up against the floor and could make that argument now have a lot more room to cut. But it does not impact the folks at the high end of the scale the same. This slide shows our FY25 homestead tax rates compared to the rest of the state. Enosburg, Richford, and Northern Mountain Valley are the 2 lines at the bottom. The red lines are the other districts in Franklin County. The lower black line is the Franklin County average, and then the line roughly in the middle is the statewide average. And so this shows us in that range between a dollar tax rate, that floor, up to about $1.80 in the highest district. This is the information that we will have in your town book, because obviously we won't have FY26 information yet. So that's the one thing that's not going to change as we go through this. We touched on this last meeting. Normally, you ask the voters to put half of the surplus from the previous school year into a capital reserve fund. This year, the surplus from the auditors is about $102,000. So half of that would be this 51 number. When we get to that January meeting and we're looking at especially that new ballot language, we have some ability to move this number. We could ask for the whole thing to go into it, or we could ask for none of it to go into that, as we did last year, if we need to to mitigate the tax rate at all. One other article that the board may want to consider, and we can have that discussion tonight or start it tonight or punt it to later, is whether we want to establish a tuition reserve fund. And the way that that would work, or the way that that should work, is that you take money as you have it in good years and you put it into this tuition reserve fund. So that's money that doesn't have to go back to the taxpayers year over year. And then that would allow us to budget our tuition payments a little more conservatively, even if we know we've got a big class coming through or we're anticipating tuition rates going up. We wouldn't have to be as defensive, because we would know if a family moves in or we have more kids, we have kids going to St. J Academy instead of one of the high schools here. We could then draw on that money if we budgeted too low. So a number of districts have started doing this over the last few years for that very reason. A lot of them are probably even more at the whim of tuition than you are. Only operating K-5, and that's an additional 3 grades that you're tuitioning. So wanted to put that out there. You could ask each year for surplus to go into that. I think if we word this, you could also look and say, okay, when we hit April and all the tuition bills are paid and we have tuition money left over, or money left over in your budget that was allocated tuition, we could just say, okay, this is a year where we can put in $50,000, $60,000, and that'll cover us for 3 kids in the future if we need it. So I don't know if anybody wants to throw some initial thoughts out there on that. We can certainly discuss it at a future meeting as well.
It's a great idea, I think. It would insulate us to some extent for the kind of fluctuations in our numbers that we inevitably see, and sometimes having to set the budget before we know the amount that schools are going to be charging for their per pupil. The downside, of course, is then we have less to work with to draw down the tax rate for taxpayers. But I think, in theory, I think it's a great idea. I mean, would we be able with each year, Morgan, to kind of play around so depending on, you said it's 102K at the moment, we're theoretically gonna put 51 toward the capital reserve,
Mm-hmm.
and then that remaining 50%, maybe hypothetically 20, half of that then would go, so we would still have a little bit to potentially draw down tax rates.
Yep, so we could certainly do that. The 2 ways that you can fund a reserve fund is bringing this money and asking the voters to do it directly. We can also look at the end of the year before we close the books, depending on how this article is written, and say, okay, we know that we underspent tuition and we have a big fund balance, and so even before we hit the end of the year, we're just going to move some of that money in there. You could also specifically budget for it. So if we hit a year where it's a very small 8th grade class and it's a very big senior class leaving, we put in 3 tuition payments that are not tied to a kid and just make it very explicit. We're going to fund the tuition reserve. We know that 7th grade is going to be big, and we don't want the tax rate to be spiking up and down year over year.
Right.
So at some point I'll make sure that the lawyers are good with the language. I just stole this from somebody else because that's how we do our jobs in Vermont.
Morgan, when we had pre-merger, when we had such big spikes in tuition, I could understand the need for this. I'd like to see maybe like a very simple historical graph of how much our tuition numbers vary from year to year, to see if we're still experiencing those huge spikes that we used to pre-merger.
Do you want that in dollars or kids or both?
I think it's probably more meaningful in number of kids because, like I can remember going back one year where we had 15 new kids over the summer that we had to tuition to high school. And that really struck home like, wow, where did those 15 kids come from? So, yeah, I think number of kids would work. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that that's certainly still an issue. But with a bigger district, a lot of those kids that you got in Berkshire that year were maybe moving from one of the other towns. So now as the NMV unit, it's a little easier to mitigate that. What I see is more of those bubble classes coming through. And if you've got a big class that's not leaving the same time as another big class, you can see budget swings that way. So in terms of tonight's budget presentation, that's all I have. In terms of previews of coming attractions at your next meeting, we'll talk a little bit about revenue. That really isn't going to change very much year over year. We will have the yield number by that time, and I am hoping we will have a draft CLA number and possibly a first look at long-term weighted ADM. There were a couple of unfortunate staffing changes at the AOE, a few people who have left, and so I'm a little worried about us getting the numbers when they're statutorily required. But we'll, until we don't get them, we'll hold out hope.
Morgan, I had a question about health insurance, because I know that 12% is, yay, only 12%. If we look back, so we're now at 41% over the last 3 years. And I was just curious if you are able to disaggregate just the health insurance piece from over this last 3 years. How much did we spend in the 22-23, the 23-24, and so on and so forth, to kind of encompass that span of the 41% over 3 years, and what that actually is in dollars.
Yep.
I feel like when we're trying to communicate to voters around the budget, and we're really trying to help people understand that that's one of the biggest drivers of costs for us that we have zero control over because it comes from the state and obviously the insurance industry setting these rate increases. And I wonder if it might be another way to help people understand the sheer dollars of it. The percentage is certainly impactful.
Yep.
41% now over 3 years, but just would be I might like to see, what is it? I'm curious for my own edification.
Yeah, I can, I'll get that for you for next meeting. One big caveat that will go with that is that people are changing plans all the time as well.
Of course. And we have different number of staff each year, and that fluctuates. So I realize it's not like a static number, but even to just get a sense, we spend X, hundreds of thousands, or maybe it's in the millions. I'm not sure on the health insurance alone. And here's the impact over the span of this now 41% increase in 3 years.
Yep.
What was the reserve number that we used last year to buy down?
I don't remember, but I probably have it written down somewhere.
It's okay.
I think it was 150,000 was the prior use of fund balance. So
I just asked Morgan that piece, and it kind of goes along with the health insurance piece. And I think this is something that isn't visible. People don't think forward. Like buying down the tax rate is like, you've got relief. But that means we start $150,000 in the hole this year because we have to make up what we fed in to the budget. So if you have that impact, you have the impact. I mean, you did not see big additions in staffing across this district. So you have the increase in the wage for the support staff and the teachers, which again, we're guessing on because we're negotiating, and the impact in health insurance. And just by those three things alone, that drives the majority of what you're seeing in terms of an increase.
Right. Okay, great, thank you. Morgan, anything else budget-wise tonight?
No, and no action items tonight, so
Okay,
unless there are any other questions.
all right, thank you so much, appreciate it.
I left a lot of space in this meeting for Morgan. Just saying. So I don't think my section, it'll take a while for one part, but I'll start with personnel. There's nothing in there that requires board action. It's informational in terms of hiring. We have had no resignations since our last meeting. We still have a few open positions. So in Bakersfield, is that still open? Pre-K, para, BT?
Kind
Okay, we're gonna say it's still open because kinda usually means something. In Berkshire, we still have the halftime health teacher and the school nurse position. Montgomery is fully staffed. In Sheldon, they have the halftime health teacher position. And Terry Sue is smiling because she thinks she's found an internal solution to the health teacher dilemma that we can share about.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So I found out our Coach Reeves, our PE teacher, also has a health cert license and loves teaching health, and we're gonna look at the schedule to make it work so she can do both for all of our students.
Oh.
And that saves us a position, and that's why it's on the call list for next year. So
Awesome,
yeah, and she's super excited to see if we can make it work.
so nice,
Yeah.
that's great news.
And next, Courtney always tries to pull something from all of our schools. I have no idea. Does each principal want to say what their pick is this month?
I can explain to if you can't tell.
All right, go for it, Courtney.
Okay.
She creeps you on the internet and finds them.
I'll have to do this. Okay. That's my specialty. Okay, so the lower left-hand corner is Montgomery Elementary School. It was lights on for after school. I don't know when.
They're all light bulbs. It's our after
They're all
school
light
celebration
bulbs.
nationwide.
Yep.
I can play that part.
The middle picture. Oh, here's gonna be my problem. I don't know which school is
Berkshire.
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 Yeah.
They were just having a fun day in PE class because it was like 65 degrees, and this week, which is
Also, our gym was being resurfaced.
well, it was just beautiful out. Let's just say that.
It was good timing.
The upper right hand corner is Bakersfield, and it was Derry came to visit the kids.
Yes, they did.
Yep. Okay.
And they're off to the farm on Friday.
Yep. And then at the last picture is Sheldon. I was like, which school did I say?
That's my school.
Sheldon, and they were playing in the leaves during recess. It was a beautiful day. And that was
It's always
my
important to get some pictures of our students in there because that's why we're doing the work that we're doing. So I'll jump into the LEAPS and after school program discussion related to Bakersfield. So I'm gonna ask Courtney to jump into the slideshow that I have linked there. So I've made an attempt to make this clearer because I think there's still, after we've talked about this several times, there's still pretty big confusion about the distinction between LEAPS and the after school program and who runs what when. I've had Heather take a second look for me and I think I have it represented. So I'm going to do my best. I'm going to go through. If you have questions, feel free to stop me. So what's the difference between the two? Essentially, LEAPS is providing after school and summer enrichment programming, and that's something that we offer through FNESU in all of our K-12 schools. Heather is the LEAPS program coordinator for all of our sites. These programs are mostly funded out of the 21st Century Learning Grants, and for us in FNESU, our Medicaid grant.
Yes.
Okay. We just changed that last year. I wanted to make sure that that was where it was coming from. So, historically, for a number of years, Bakersfield did not have a summer LEAPS program. When we first did the 21C summer program, Bakersfield did have one, and the numbers were quite small in that program. And at that time, there was discussion about ASP and LEAPS competing a little bit, and the decision was made that the funding couldn't support if ASP was happening there, that LEAPS there weren't enough kids to be able to do it. So LEAPS, those Bakersfield kids were offered space in the Enosburg Elementary summer program, and we offered busing for several years. Heather found grant funding to separate from the 21C to bring LEAPS programming back for 2 years, right? At Bakersfield. So here's why, one of the reasons why we're having this conversation. That grant funding expired last summer. So now we're in a position where we have to decide, based on the data that I'm going to share with you tonight, one of the things we're going to think about, it's really the SU board that will decide, but we're going to think about, does it make sense to continue to offer a LEAPS summer program in Bakersfield, that enrichment piece of the summer program. And I'll tell you why we're going to be exploring that. And then if so, how are we going to fund it will be the piece that the FNESU board will have to take up if that's where they end up going. So the difference between LEAPS and ASP is that the ASP is a program that began as kind of a grassroots organization a couple of decades ago. We've heard from Sharon Lawyer, who was the original person who created this. It's really a childcare program. It was run through the school. Sharon did a lot of the legwork and heavy lifting to make this happen, and it was an attempt to create a childcare opportunity within the community to help support families on like school vacations and during the summer. That all started well before any LEAPS programs existed in FNESU. So one thing I just wanted, before I shift away, I want to remind people, I know I reminded people of this last time, we're very, very fortunate in FNESU. One of the things that we are well resourced in is the opportunities that we provide for our students after school. There are many schools around the state whose children come in on a bus at the beginning of the day and they go home on a bus, or they go to childcare, they go to someone's house at the end of the day, and then the lights are out and there's no after school offering, there's no summer program offering. So we are offering some rich opportunities during the school year and during the summer. So that's the difference between the two. The LEAPS after school program offers, and this was the part I think we really were struggling to figure out, and made a mistake. Hold on, I'll just say it. So LEAPS does not, the ASP is no longer adding to the length at the end of the day. Correct. For the LEAPS program. So there's no morning or after school ASP during the weeks that LEAPS is operating. What they are covering are school vacations, and they're also covering those weeks that the LEAPS programs are shut down. And in the summer, the LEAPS program runs all the weeks of June that we're out of school and all the weeks of August that we're out of school and there's no LEAPS. From
July, so we're 5 weeks.
Right. I'm sorry, I said LEAPS. I meant ASP.
Okay. Correct.
So that's 7 to 5:30. The weeks that the LEAPS program runs, which is like the 4 weeks of July and a week in August, the 5-week program, LEAPS offers 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the morning, and then they offer 3 to 5:30 in the afternoon. Okay?
ASP does.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting the acronym. No wonder you're confused.
It doesn't help that like all of the schools call LEAPS ASP.
Right.
So I'm constantly correcting that.
So did people get that? They're filling the holes. So okay, I'm gonna get it right this time, I promise. while Leaps is running, while Heather's program is running in the summer, they're running 8 to 3.
ASP.
No, Leaps. So in Bakersfield, when her program is running, ASP is running childcare drop off from 7 to 8 and then 3 to 5:30. So childcare at the start, childcare at the end. And they're also filling the gaps. ASP is filling the gaps on the other weeks where there's no Leaps programming. Okay? So the distinction is Leaps is after school and summer enrichment, and ASP is childcare. Okay. So on the next slide, you gotta go. Yep. So there's these are just examples of the schedule, and I know you cannot read those numbers, but what this really is, you've seen that visual before. You know that that's our school year calendar. And the way Heather has laid this out is she's showing you in the dark purple the first trimester of Leaps offerings in the, what do we call that? Fuchsia. Is the middle trimester, and then the red is the last trimester of the year. That's when Leaps operates in our schools, in addition to the 5 weeks of the summer program in July and August. I think I have this piece right, the BEMS ASP schedule, try to get really clear on that. During the school year, they run before Leaps starts in September, after Leaps ends in June, during some school vacations, during the Leaps shutdown weeks, and in August after Leaps ends. And then during Leaps summer weeks, they operate 7 to 8 and 3 to 5:30. That part makes sense?
Yes.
I think that was clearer than my first attempt. We asked Kevin to gather some historical information because I don't think we shared this piece the last time when we were together. And the historical information is about how many kids generally are participating in that childcare portion of this. So because it hasn't happened yet during this school year, these are projected participation numbers based off historical data of the past few years. And I think, did Sharon help you get this?
Sharon and Rhonda.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
So 6 to 15 students in the morning and the afternoon sessions during the summer. In between the LEAP sessions during the school year, there's approximately 24 students. During Thanksgiving break, they're open 2 days during that week and they have approximately 16 to 24 students. During the December break, they're not open. During the February break, they have 16 to 24 students. During the April break, they have 16 to 24 students. So there is a slide that I did not put in there. Shoot, it's the one that you sent me, Heather. Give me 1 second. There was a correction to it and I deleted it and then I never went back to put the new one in.
And as Lynn's looking, the numbers fluctuate because of vacations, people taking vacations. And that's all I got to stall.
I'm almost done.
No jokes.
Do your presentation from last month
I
again.
could continue on the MTSS in Bakersfield. I will say, we did our second round of
You're not there yet.
Okay, I'm
it was
ready.
amazing.
Courtney,
They went from
I might have
reds to
to
greens.
do it
Go
again.
on.
Courtney, can you please hit refresh?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Sorry, I have to stop
what I
sharing for a minute.
presented to you last time was information about LEAP's summer costs, okay? We did a little looking at the costs around the childcare portion and found that they're not really running in the hole. They're generally running in an okay place in terms of the financial impact. But one of the questions again that we're trying to answer for is the affordability of continuing on with LEAPs in Bakersfield. Because again, we identified one of the problems is those two programs compete against one another a little bit. So in Bakersfield, the cost per student per hour is $10, which is higher than in any of our other programs. All of the other programs run between $6 and $7 an hour, with the exception of Richford Junior Senior High School, and that was a decision under a different grant, not this one. That's also a school that is like Bakersfield, was not a part of the summer grant when we originally wrote it.
It's a pretty new summer program.
Did you want to add anything to that?
Just in terms of the fundings with that, yeah, the general numbers, some of you had heard me say it before, are at or below state average, except for the Bakersfield one, which is above the state average by a little bit. And the numbers that we used to base it on was our average daily attendance, which in Bakersfield is significantly lower. We originally budgeted for a cap of 55 students, hoping for about 45. We had about 27 enroll, with an average of 17 attending per day.
One of the things that makes this a bit challenging is the same people who work with Heather in the LEAPS program also work in the ASP childcare program. So we've shared with all of the boards the really wonderful, enriching opportunities that happen in most of our summer camps over the summer. I think Heather did, I think she did, did we do it? Yeah, I did it for you at this board. And so you could see all the things that were offered. It was more challenging to get to that level of enrichment in Bakersfield because those people were trying to run two programs and they were never able to come out for any of the professional learning that went along with them knowing how to make a really enriching summer program. So even though there were tools and resources that were purchased through the grant for them to use during the summer, because there's that competing priority piece, we weren't able to get that to the same level as our other programs. So one of the things when we're talking about competing is, I feel personally that there are some kids in Bakersfield missing out because they're looking at that program through the lens of that's childcare, and whether it's them or their parents, they're not looking at as an opportunity to go like do some really interesting things and learn about some cool topics and have some really engaging experiences. So that's been a
You can just add anecdotally, we've heard from some families that they're choosing to go to other camps that are, some of them are paid for camps, instead of participating in LEAPS. And ASP did have, when the LEAPS program left Bakersfield, ASP took over that spot to fill a service for the community, which did compete for numbers for the Enosburg, Bakersfield students to go to Enosburg for the Enosburg LEAPS program. So I definitely get the sense that even though we brought LEAPS back, there wasn't a full understanding of maybe what the differences were or what we were bringing into the program. And so some families who have the ability to go elsewhere chose to go elsewhere versus staying in-house, and it's with 17 students, it can be very challenging to offer some of the opportunities that we might have offered to some of the larger programs.
So there's several dilemmas, and I think this gets to Dan's question that he asked earlier. So one of the dilemmas goes back to LEAPS and what we do because we don't have the grant. We've got to figure out the funding. We've got a program that has really low summer participation and it has a higher cost per people than our other programs. That grant has expired. We are going to have to answer the question. The SU board is going to have to answer the question, and SU reps on this board are going to have to give feedback to the SU board. Do we want to budget for a summer LEAPS program in Bakersfield if on average we had 17 students participating? So we already expressed this piece that when we're running both at the same time, it is a bit of a competing priority with the professional learning that needs to happen with the people in the LEAPS program in order to get us to that goal of a high quality enrichment opportunity. Here's the other piece is that I'm just going to be really blunt. There is a creep of responsibility that is happening on the education systems in Vermont. And It is a heavy lift that we're expected to carry when other systems are closing down, when it comes to mental health services, when it comes to alternative programs, therapeutic services. Those, we're sorely missing those opportunities in Vermont, and we're having to fill in the gap. So it's a little bit about the creep of responsibility on what is landing on the lap of schools, and childcare isn't in our scope of work. Childcare is generally a community issue that people figure out either through private providers or communities working to figure that piece out. I will say when this began in Bakersfield, it was driven by that group of community members and it ended up being the school became the fiscal agent. Times were very different then than they are now in terms of what schools and districts are expected to hold. So it isn't even about just the fiscal agent part of it. All the liability for the program, the staffing, if there's something that happens on the program, it not only falls on the school, it also ultimately, all the things fall on me and under my license as well. And this is a childcare program that we're holding in one of our spaces, which I'm going to reiterate is outside of our scope. I do have some suggestions, and I just want to acknowledge something. The board, Mary and I, received some very compelling emails over the course of the last month of people talking about how important this childcare program is for members of the Bakersfield community, and I just want to acknowledge that. And I hear that, and at the same time, I think that this board has to examine both that what you're hearing, but you also have to take a realistic view on what we can hold within our system. So I do have some recommendations. So I'm wondering if we think about a pilot of LEAPS in Bakersfield for the summer of 2025 with the goal of really increasing the participation trend in that. There's one piece of it. When I think about the childcare need, I agree that there is a need in that community for childcare. I know someone personally who has just gone through this childcare piece, and the business opportunity that exists for people right now through grant funding in the state to support the opening of childcare centers is phenomenal right now. So it is a business opportunity that someone within that community could consider opening. The other possibility is, could the ASP program find a different fiscal agent? Could it be the town of Bakersfield, or could it fall under another umbrella that's outside the scope of our responsibility? So we can just remove that from our plate. We, as a school system, could certainly support a transition through the end of this year where we could hold that program in Bakersfield, and whoever is willing to take on that program, we could help with that transition in the community. And if there is a location for that in the community, that's great. If there's not, if the community looks at this and says, we found a new fiscal agent, everything's going to fall under their liability, their responsibility. We have a facility use policy. So if whatever that entity is takes care of this and then comes to us and says, can we utilize the school, we could work through that under the facility use piece. So my recommendation is to just remove it from the scope of education, help support the Bakersfield community to come up with another option. And Sharon said that to us in the meeting. She said, if you're going to remove it from the school, just tell us so we can work on figuring it out. So I think that's what people are. I mean, no one wants to see the change, but at the same time, you all see how much is landing on us in terms of like the fiscal pressures and the responsibility pressures. So those are my recommendations.
And I have one thing to say about the fifth point there, that could consider opening a center under the facility use process. The only thing that concerns me about that is that that's kind of like a year-to-year thing. And I'm not sure an operator would want to have that short of a commitment. And I'm not sure families would be as comfortable with that kind of commitment, that short commitment. So I wonder if there's some way to work that into the facility use process so that it's a more stable program that people can rely on, like they do the program that already exists.
I think the idea of it is that whoever takes this on, it would be their responsibility to ensure that they can hold the program and, you know, maintain it over a period of time. It's under the scope of this board to say we could grant permission to use the facility. Certainly in that policy, there are some conditions about, you know, their responsibilities within the facility. The board could say, you know, we'll do this for 2 years and then we'll revisit it. I mean, it is, I don't see a reason why the school would then say, we're not gonna do this. Do you, Kevin?
No, I wasn't thinking like you're thinking. That's a good thought. Certainly if a community member is thinking of it as a business venture, so all of a sudden the potential that the building that you thought was there is no longer there. I just think there needs to be really clear, if the board says 2 years, I think that's great. I think that we just need to be really with our open communication, that we just don't pull the carpet from underneath somebody. Right? So I think if you're honest and you give somebody a 12-month window that will be pulling it at the end of the 12th month, that would be reasonable.
I mean, I
don't see any reason why we would say no. With the current, we have people use our building all the time, right?
I think there are different levels in the facility use. So if it was like a private business, that would be a little different.
Correct.
Than if it was the community of Bakersfield is going to hold the fiscal agent and liability responsibilities, and everything falls under them. That's simpler.
Yeah, there's like a men's basketball might use it for.
Right. We already do all this.
Right.
And I think
so. I have another question. I'm sorry, but what age group would this service? Just the kids that it services now, or could it be expanded on? Because that's a very limited age group that you're talking about, right? And would somebody really want to delve into a new business just for those few hours?
I really don't know the answer to that, and I don't want to say anything about age groups, because what I'm trying to advocate for is that this isn't something we're holding anymore, and that
I'm just talking about the use of the school building, though. I mean, like, if you were going to open it up to all 3 to 5 year olds or 2 to 3 year olds, then it would have to be during the school day. So where would you put these kids?
I'm not.
In the building.
We couldn't, Lisa. We would not be able to support that.
Right, so I want that to be very transparent, that if someone in the community thinks that they're going to open a profitable business that is to provide childcare for the community, it would have to be limited to what exists currently, because that's the space constraint in the building now. And when Kevin was talking about, he couldn't see discontinuing that. Well, what if your population at school somehow explodes? You know, we've had that happen in other schools, and all of a sudden you're out of space. Then what happens to that program? So I just want people to go into this with their eyes open, that these things could happen.
Sure, and I think I want to clarify, because I don't think when I was saying the business opportunity, I certainly wasn't trying to say I think it's a good idea for the business, someone privately trying to open this as a for-profit business to try to do it through the school facility. I was more looking at the school facility, if the town or a volunteer group were to find a way to do that through the school piece. That's more what I was
for those
thinking.
15 to 24 kids, or those 6 to 24 kids,
Yes.
and not an individual opening a daycare center,
No.
just to serve that
Right.
population that you're already aware of that would be out in the cold if you said, no
Right.
more, we're not doing this
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
This
Okay.
specific childcare is only licensed for school-age youth.
Right.
So as it stands now, so if you're looking at it, it's kind of like a turnkey redistribution opportunity for that business. It's only school-aged youth.
So this ASP that exists through this memorandum of understanding or whatever happened 20 years ago is just for ages what through what, Heather?
5 to 12 maybe?
Well, it runs up, it's the K-8 population.
Yes,
Oh,
okay.
5 to 14.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, good to know, thanks.
Because there are kids in middle school.
That's right, yeah.
So I think just to be clear that if somebody wanted to take this on, what I'm saying is that they could go through the process, they could apply through the facility use, but I'm recommending that we shouldn't hold the childcare responsibility.
And I did hand out to board people a compilation, thank you Courtney for helping me put that together, of the various letters from community members. And if any of them are watching, I do really appreciate that people reached out. I appreciate and empathize immensely with the heartfelt letters, and I'm also empathetic to the childcare struggles that are not unique to Bakersfield. I think they're pervasive across all our towns and beyond. And I certainly know as a parent, when my children were young, I also struggled with that delicate dance of work and childcare. It's not easy in rural communities. So I did wanna let the board people read that, and you folks in the virtual realm should have the email of that packet if you would like to read any of the letters. So, you know, that said, I am understanding Lynn's concerns around the liability piece and what we are being asked to shoulder. Increasingly, these are really tough times for our schools. We have to tend to so many details around educating the kids in our communities. And we're doing it on a shoestring budget, both fiscally and as far as our human resources are concerned also. And I think the LEAPS program is phenomenal. And what Heather's done to grow the program over these many years is really quite extraordinary. And I don't know if people are aware that LEAPS is not a ubiquitous program across the state. There are other schools and systems that operate comparable, although maybe not quite as excellent as ours is, programs. But that said, it's a real labor of love. We've kind of grown this over the last many, many years. And I hope that we continue to really prioritize it, because it's an incredible addition to what we do in the schools. The ASP is competing with that human resource component, especially with the ability for the people who are working in the LEAPS to get the training that they need to offer really high quality LEAPS programs. So that's just an inherent conflict. And I think that we're at a time with budget pressures and everything that's on our plates that we have to ask, what is our lane? And how do we stay in our lane? And how do we improve what we're doing that's in our lane? And childcare just simply isn't. And this was born of a tremendous need that Sharon saw in the community, and she's been an unbelievable force in this realm. And I really applaud her and the other community members that have come together to fill a void. a void that also does exist in our other schools, and we simply can't offer comparable programs in the other schools because, again, it's just not our lane. If we had unlimited resources and unlimited human resources, fiscal resources, sure, but I am feeling as though we've been having and kind of dancing around this conversation now for a couple of years. It is always so difficult to make decisions that people feel harm them or, compromise their ability to work. I'm not at all, I feel so much empathy for the families that rely on this program, but I also trust that there's a way for us to do a soft landing if we decide to end this program. At least our kind of fiscal responsibility around it, as well as the liability responsibility around it, as well as the impact that it's having on us being able to grow our program, which is LEAPS.
Okay, so Mary, one thing, can I just, before, I agree very much, and I appreciate all you've done, Lynn, for possible suggestions and things. I feel very strongly for the kids, and I think one of the things we need to think about is very much that soft landing. How do we support families through this process? How do we grow the LEAPS program in Bakersfield so that they really have some enriching activities? I think the confusion of the summer programs, devastating. I worked this summer for a little while and did a sewing group with them, and my own grandchildren do not take part. We used to do an enrichment program that was highly effective, so I'd love to see our LEAPS grow. I don't want to see it gone, so I would love to see us a trial period in Bakersfield that, okay, trained, this is what you're doing this day, this is what you're doing that day, and a truly enriching program. But my fear is that we don't leave these families and say, oh, sorry, program's gone. That we support that transition to no longer, and money isn't the issue because it always has run in the black. It's not money, it is what's our responsibility.
And it's a liability piece too. Like,
yes.
It isn't a money issue until something happens.
Yes.
And then when something happens,
Yep, I agree.
it is our responsibility.
Yes. And I think part of the issue there too is you're running a program, who's certified to do what? Who's when you do get that suit, I've been to court on one of them. So yeah, it will be ugly. So yeah.
I have a logistical question about that, and my question is the staff that right now is being torn in two different directions between working for the ASP and not having enough time to put into the LEAPS. So will whoever take over as the new fiscal agent have to hire their own staff for the ASP?
I mean, I think, I don't know how we could figure that part out. Like the people who work in these programs have their own free will. Obviously, they can figure out where they're going to work. But I think that if it continues to be something that is happening in our schools, I think, we could say there can't be a compete piece. So maybe it's on those days. It ends at 3, and those are, you've got a pretty solid chunk of your day, but for those 5 weeks, could the families figure out the 3 to 5 piece in the ASP uses it on the other days? So that way staff isn't competing on the same days and there's time and space for them to do all the prep that they need to for the enrichment and the professional learning. But
I'm not sure that answered my question. I think maybe I wasn't clear. Will a staff person not be able to work for ASP if they've committed to working for the LEAPS program?
I'm not saying that they can't, Lisa. I'm saying that I would like us to put some parameters around not competing on the same weeks. And we wouldn't be able to create that condition. We couldn't tell people that they couldn't do both. Like it wouldn't be our program, and we wouldn't be there. We don't have responsibility over them in the summer, so they can make whatever choice they want.
Okay, I was thinking more when both programs are running, not in the summer when only one of the programs, when the ASP is running. I guess I'm just not understanding this conflict of staff not having enough time to prepare to work at LEAPS. I'm not understanding the timing of it all, and I couldn't read the chart that Heather prepared because the writing is too small. So I don't know like the hours off the top of my head.
Yeah, Lisa,
I'm just trying to figure out if the new fiscal agent will have to start from scratch, I guess.
I want to try to jump in and see if I can help a little bit with some of the conflict right now with scheduling. Is LEAP specifically schedules in a break between sessions for staff to create program goals and outcome expectations around our activities, to learn new activities, to orient themselves with the goals of 21C and the goals of the school, because those are both meant to be in alignment. That's like 21C is specifically designed to support students' social emotional well-being and academic enrichment to help move forward school goals. What we've seen historically is staff who are working in ASP, because they're working during our closed week, do not attend staff meetings. And I've started instituting mandatory summer trainings, and many of the staff who work in both programs can't attend the mandatory summer trainings. We've kind of let that go to an extent because the school has two obligations, and how do we prioritize which obligation in that moment? So so that's part of the conflict that we're having scheduling wise. And then in summer, we also found that because of the sandwiching of our summer schedule with the ASP program, we're also not having those staff members work 5 days a week because they're really, really long days for those staff members, which kind of jumpstarts routines very often throughout the week. You have different staff members working throughout the week. So it's kind of hard to have the range of programming that we're looking for when you're starting over with new staff every day or every couple of days. So it would be, Bakersfield would not be competing with both priorities. Then it would be, staff would have to, if they decided to be hired by this outside entity, they would have to inform them that they also have this obligation to LEAPS for the other job that they have. And we're gonna need to really hold the LEAPS staff accountable to attending these trainings to work in the program, because that's how we're gonna continue to grow the program. We've seen these summer program trainings that we've been seeing huge differences in what we're able to offer by having our staff come to the table, talk about goals, talk about intentionality, and learn from each other and really dive into their programming.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's fairly transparent to me, but I wanted to make sure that other people who might be listening are aware of this too, that with the obligation the obligations that are expected when someone signs up to work for LEAPS, they probably realistically going forward will not be able to work for somebody else in the ASP program, because it sounds like you're gonna start making them attend the mandatory things that they need to attend, and that's rightly so, because that's their job. So I just want it to be clear that there are gonna have to be more childcare workers out there to make this program fly with a different entity being the fiscal agent. And I totally agree with Lynn that the school is not supposed to be in the childcare business. Never has been, shouldn't be. But I'm just trying to have people go into this with their eyes open as we make this decision, that there may be some hard consequences, that there isn't enough staff available in the community of Bakersfield to make this happen.
One fear I have though is I know that LEAP has had a hard time finding staffing, school year, summer. So to really, not lose that piece too, you know, that, teachers are tired, a lot of them, you know, 2 more hours is just beyond, so yeah.
Yeah, I know we've been getting new staff working after school. Rachel's been on her 2nd year as site coordinator. She's been making a lot of gains. So still hopeful. We've been really upping some of the activities we have there.
Good.
Any other discussion around the ASP Bakersfield program? So we do have this as an action item, so that said, I am gonna make a motion that we, trying to think the wording on this, we certainly wanna do a soft landing, at least through this school year of 24-25. That we would continue the ASP and work with them to transition and end the ASP program in Bakersfield by the end of the school year, this current 24-25 school year. Any discussion on that motion or clarification?
Yes, I just want to be certain that this will be made known right away to the families that are using the ASP program.
We'll between Kevin and Sharon, we can make sure that happens.
I'm sure I'll have a person in my office tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. I mean, if people have that much warning, that's a lot more warning than there is around a sudden closure of a daycare center, for instance. But I just want to make sure that people get as much warning as we've gotten about it.
Could you modify that so it says the end of June? So the end of, when you say end of school year, I think Kevin's.
I'm just wondering if we could do it up until LEAPS begins.
Sure.
Does that make
Of course,
sense?
absolutely.
Is that gonna throw off your?
You just need to make
Training.
sure that if any staff members want
That's
to
their
work for
choice.
LEAPS, that they might have closing,
Yep.
might have to close
A
for
day or
those
two.
days,
Yeah.
and they will be pre-scheduled.
Yep.
Yeah.
We already have one scheduled in June, and I've been communicating with my coordinators of like pre-scheduling
Yeah.
their training days.
Great, I mean, I think that, you know, it's gonna be really important for us to have very clear communication with all stakeholders involved. And I think that outlining these and the date, you know, the dates and what that transition is gonna look like makes perfect sense. And it seems like Heather and, you know, Lynn and Kevin can work on all that communication and what that transition will be like. So I'm happy to amend that motion to carry the ASP through the end of June when the LEAPS program begins. And any further discussion on that?
So are we gonna actually do something for soft handoff, actively look for someone whose responsibility would that be, or would that just be kind of like Sharon and ASP?
I think that'll be
Yes.
Sharon.
I would encourage Sharon to engage a community group to try to do that piece.
My biggest concern is, I mean, I feel like we are gonna end up leaving these people in dark unless LEAPS can really take it over and additionally provide enrichment. I mean, living in Bakersfield the last 4 years, I've seen daycare centers come and go already that had kids. Excuse me. And so they were getting money. They just closed for whatever reason. At least one, or not, if not two. I've seen the last 4 years, 5 years up in Bakersfield. So my concern is, even if we do a soft handoff, give it to someone else, who's to say they're going to close and we're still going to leave these families in the dark? That's my biggest concern. And a lot of these people don't seem to have a place to go for childcare other than ASP. But if we can figure out, if Sharon can figure it out, it's on her.
We'd be in the same boat if Sharon decided to actually retire someday.
Yeah, I mean, that's another point I was gonna make. She wants to retire.
She's been doing it for decades
Yeah.
at this point. I mean,
I think it's an opportunity for the community to come together and problem solve around this. I just think, I wanna say again, Zach, like, our soft handoff is like holding it all the way to the end of June. That's a long time and a lot of notice, and even saying like, if there's a community group that wants to figure this out, we'll even partner around the space if it's possible.
Yeah.
But I don't think we should be tasked with like making sure that we find a replacement like that. We can't hold that.
I agree with that for sure. I mean, yeah.
I know it's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us take these kinds of decisions lightly at all. And I understand your concerns. I understand the concern of the people who have reached out to me over the last couple of weeks. And I think we have to trust that Sharon and the community will be able to find a way forward here without it landing on the shoulders of the district at this point. We are in a really different time with what we carry and with the needs that we are trying, like profound needs that we're trying to address while also providing really enriching educational and extracurricular opportunities. And at some point, it's just got to be a recognition that childcare is not the responsibility of the school district. So there is a motion on the table. I'm gonna do that by roll. Miranda?
Aye.
Lisa? You're muted.
She can't get off.
Oh,
I couldn't get unmuted, sorry. Aye.
John?
Aye.
Arlene?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye. And I'm truly sorry for the weight of that decision, especially for our Bakersfield people. I really understand that. And I'm trusting that we can find a way forward and support our families. And Sharon is a powerhouse, and she's dynamic, and she has an incredible skill set.
Do you want me to move?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So we had a question from a board member about the number of educators in the NMV side of the district that have emergency and provisional licenses, and what's the progress update on those educators so that we can kind of anticipate where they'll be at the end of the year. One, I owned to the board member at the start of the meeting that I didn't do my homework and I'm not prepared with the data. I will bring it back in December. But I also want to say I can bring back the data, which is similar to what the SU board got from Jamie in our September meeting. But what I can't give is a progress update, because the way the provisionals work is at the end of the first year of the provisional license, anybody who is on that has to like do a check-in with the agency, but they don't have to provide any evidence. So they just say what their plan is. And so none of that is due until they try to get the license at the end of this next school year. So we won't have a handle on that piece until we're approaching the end to know like who's on pace and who is not on pace. We are not one of the systems because we haven't invested in this. There are some systems that North Country in particular, we're usually competing in the top 4 for the highest number of provisionally licensed teachers, unfortunately, in the state. And North Country and Franklin Northeast are often very close to one another. And I do know that one of the things that they have is, I believe it's North Country has hired navigators
or a navigator to help people through the provisional process. We have not done that. This is just another one of the many, many responsibilities that Jamie McAllister holds as the HR director. So she meets with everybody at the start, goes over these are things that you need to do, and make sure that they get all their paperwork in at the beginning, and does the check-in to make sure they're good after year one, and then she finds out, in year two. But it is here the responsibility of the employee to see it all the way through. So you can bring back the numbers if it's helpful, but I won't be able to answer the question.
Is it possible to know how many last year were ending year two and were able to get their licensure,
Yes.
or,
I
that
can
kind of,
do that.
how we are on that.
So maybe do you want the last couple of years?
Sure,
To see,
if it's working,
what number
yeah.
were in year two provisional, what percentage maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
How effective is it? Are we getting licensed teachers out of this process?
In my school, yeah.
You have, yes.
Definitely gotten teachers through
Some of them steal one.
Nope.
Lynn, are you good?
I think I'm good.
With that? Okay.
Do you also want, there's one other scenario that comes with that. Sometimes there's, it's rare, but sometimes we can get an additional year if there's a unique circumstance. I probably will include that in there as well. Okay. I'm all set.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, brings us to our principal reports. Kevin, you're up.
I am. Mine is only 36 minutes today, so it won't be 34 like last time. You had my board report. Our last month was filling buckets, which was a lot of fun. I received a lot of beautiful pictures that kids have drawn. Just wanted to let me know that they want to fill my bucket. So that was awfully nice. I didn't get that a lot at the middle school. So it's nice to get that at the K through 8 school. This month is, of course, thankful and gratitude. And we do a daily drawing where we draw someone within the community, or 4 people actually within the community, that has shown being thankful and gratifying to others, and it has been a lot of fun to end the day in such a real positive way. It's just been so much fun.
And I have to add in that I'm there sometimes when that happens,
Yep.
because I'm reading first grade, and it's wonderful to hear their classmates all cheer for them
They
when
cheer.
they get it. Doesn't matter who it is, the whole class.
Kindergarten will often cry
Yeah.
because they didn't get it, but I did sneak down today and give them all something, because they do like to fill buckets in kindergarten, so they all got something, but it was cute.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Gavin.
So with Berkshire, I always like to start off. We had our whole campus morning meeting, and today we named Miss Ginger Morse our longtime math teacher, actually our longest tenured teacher at Berkshire Elementary School, as the staff member of the month, and so she got the championship belt. In addition to that, we focused a lot on community and just coming together. I know this went unsaid just because it had to, but this past election season was very divisive, obviously, and it was felt in our community as well. So it was really us coming back together and really honoring what makes us a community and how we are obligated to care and respect and accept one another as well. In terms of academic proficiency, we're trying to shift away just from using summative data and looking a lot more towards formative data. So it's what's happening in the classroom, and also I think sometimes the common misconception is, well, okay, I'm going to give this lesson and then I'm going to give an exit ticket at the end of the class, and then I'm going to see if they learned it or not. Well, it's too late by that point because they're now walking out of the room. You don't necessarily have the ability to make the in-class instructional adjustments. So we're working quite a bit on trying to find those smaller informal assessments that you can do throughout the lesson to adjust instruction accordingly. In terms of SEL, a lot of things are happening right now. We've continued to push with our MTSS program to identify behavioral supports for students through EST plans or through targeted intervention. In addition to that, we've undergone a couple of different PDs, or will be going through one. One of the biggest ones is the You Matter training that's going to be led from one of our colleagues from NCSS that focuses on self-harm prevention and suicide prevention. In addition to that, this past Tuesday, we worked a lot on reviewing what our current behavioral expectations are, and then also looking at trauma-informed practices as well. And one of the fun things was I pulled out a lesson from Teach Like a Champion, and I showed teachers the teacher dance moves, which are basically be seen looking moves, which essentially is finding ways to not just make sure that you're observing and monitoring students in class, but they should know that you're monitoring them, even though they think that they're outsmarting you. Like, oh, I always know when Mr. Wright is looking at me. That's actually the point. That you want them to know that they're being watched and they're being observed. The disco finger was my favorite. At some point on another PD, maybe my spotlight, I'll show you some of the dance moves. And then finally, we're continuing to, we're implementing richer picture at the middle school level to focus on portrait of a learner. Our team came together and we identified the transferable skills across the UAs and the core subject classes that we're going to be focusing on. And then each teacher in a core content area chose one specific indicator as well. Oh, and then one final thing, sorry. The nurse position is open, but we did have an interview this past week with a very promising candidate. Great. So my hope is that by next month I'll be able to announce an arrival of a school nurse.
Excellent. Thanks, Gavin. Sandy, do you have anything you'd like to highlight?
I'd be happy to answer any questions about what I already put in my report, but I would just like to add that some kudos to Robert Hickey, our tech integrationist, who had put in a ton of time with all of the technology that we have around us, and not only that, but our new furniture that the screws were set in wrong of the parts that came put together, and he had to take them apart and reset the screws and level everything. It was kind of a mess. But he got it done, and I have this little video that I'd like. It's like 30 seconds from the state visit when the state came, and it was when I was out, so I wasn't here. But Courtney's got it all ready.
Gotcha.
Before I came across the Educate Innovate grant, I had applied to legitimately 29 different grants to try to get 3D printers in our schools. Funding is always a challenge. Receiving this grant gave us opportunities to add equipment and most importantly provide students to get some hands-on learning with equipment that we haven't had. It's a different learning opportunity than we would have been able to provide otherwise. These are the types of experiences I've always wished I could provide for students. The Educate Innovate Award from the Vermont Lottery for our students is revolutionary.
Thank you, Robert.
Can I just clarify, Robert is our SU tech integrationist. Last year he was just for NMV, now he's the whole system. And we completely, I don't know how to even describe it, we took over his whole late summer, early fall, because we used the last of our ESSER money to invest in highly engaging materials and resources for our schools, which the SU board will hear more about. So it's not typical your tech integrationist would be working on tables in your library, so I just want to clarify that. This was part of the move to make better learning spaces in our libraries too that were all pretty outdated.
And which is all back in that corner, and it's just amazing. Kids love it.
So thank you.
I was going to update something academic, but I have better news that I want to share that's affected our Sheldon community. November 3rd last year, one of our 7th graders had a heart attack, was airlifted to the Boston Children's Hospital, was determined his heart was going to be failing, and he was put on a transplant list. So a year ago, November 3rd. Last week, he was feeling awful. He has an implant of some sort that was helping keep him healthy. He has a lot of restrictions, 8th grader now, obviously. And he had to get raced to Boston again at the end of last week because fluid was leaking into his valves and etc. So it was pretty awful and we weren't sure. So they changed his ranking on the transplant list from a 1B to a 1A I don't really know anything, I just know that that puts him higher up on the list. On November 3rd of this year, Sunday, he got notified, he was down in Boston, obviously still at the hospital, and got notified that a heart was available and he'd be getting it that night. So Sunday night at 9 p.m., when the heart arrived, he got his transplant. It's a very long surgery, it's about a 12-hour surgery. Didn't take 12 hours, but that was the anticipation. So about 6:30, I get the text that surgery is over, the heart's beating on his own. He's been put back into ICU, but he would have to remain. They use a paralysis drug on him and some sedatives to keep him unconscious for several days because they have to keep his chest open for things to heal. And then today, this afternoon, they closed his chest and everything is still good. They took off the paralysis medication and so he can move, and he's slowly being released from the sedative so he can wake up. And we should have him back in our building as a thriver, not just survivor, like beginning of February, as an 8th grade student. So he'll be able to finish 8th grade here. I mean, there's still a long way to go, but he's passed the first 2 major hurdles. And so it was just, our community is like super excited. The 5th graders, because he has a cousin in 5th grade, all made cards that we sent off today. I found out he likes comic books, so I went and picked up a comic that he was looking for that just came out yesterday at the comic shop and sent that off with the package. And our middle school team has set up a buddy lunch during lunch and recess that friends can have like their friend group via Zoom while he's in Boston for the next couple months. So that's all I wanted to share because it was just so happy hearing that happened today, and it was like so much closer. Just made my day.
And God bless the family.
Yeah, they're
who had to make that decision.
Yes,
So,
definitely.
You know,
Yeah.
thankful.
Yeah.
Very thankful.
That's all I got. Do you have any notes? And we look forward to hosting next month in Sheldon.
Thank you. So that's a good segue. Our next meeting will be December 4th in Sheldon. And any other discussion from the board tonight? Oh, yes, sorry, it's been a day. So I'm sad to say that Kat Barnard has resigned her position on the board. She has had some opportunities arise that pull her in other directions. So we really want to wish Kat well. She's been on the board for many, many years, and both on the NMV board as well as the SU board. I personally have really enjoyed working with her. She always has excellent questions and insights, and has been a great dynamic board member for many, many years. So I will miss her. I'm sure we will all miss her. So that said, we do now have an opening on the NMV board. I am been speaking with people in the community, and anyone who is interested should reach out to me and email me. And I know we have Michelle. I know Michelle has expressed, I believe you expressed interest, yes? So, do you wanna speak to the board now, or say anything and introduce yourself?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, I did get your email, it's just been a day.
Yeah, no
So I
worries.
will respond, and certainly if anyone else from the community is interested, the board, the NMV board will appoint this person. And then, Morgan, my question, because you posted that, I know my seat, and I'm planning to run again, is up, as well as,
Whoever's nominated will have to run again.
so we'll actually have 3 of us on the ballot.
It's up in March, and
Right.
then that person will run again whenever that cycle is, which will either be
Right,
the
so they
following
would
year
be
or 2
running for
years.
the 2-year seat, correct?
I don't
The
remember if
remainder
she's
of cats, whatever that is.
Yeah, which is a 2-year, and mine is the 3-year.
They're all 3-year, it's just where
Oh.
she is in the cycle. So
Okay.
they might have to run in another year, they might have to run in another
Okay.
2.
Okay, perfect. So, I will keep everyone informed about that, and hopefully we'll have someone joining us for that December meeting.
So there are some other positions that Kat filled
Correct.
So she was our regional advisory board member for the CTE centers, the Franklin County CTE centers. That position is something that I think we probably meet quarterly, and sometimes it's at Cold Hollow, sometimes it's at Northwest Tech. There's always a virtual option for those meetings, so people can participate either way, and it's usually about an hour when we meet.
What day of the week does it tend to
It is
fall?
really random.
Okay.
It's usually mid-morning.
Is that the NMV board that appoints that, or is it the SU board?
That's the NMV.
I think
Yeah.
I'm thinking
No, it's the NMV because we have to do one for the other board as well.
I could potentially be convinced to do it. I mean, it's certainly I'm very interested in the work. It would have to be, my participation would have to be virtual.
Yeah.
And as long as it doesn't conflict with my work schedule, which is why I asked about the days.
It's not in the afternoon ever.
Okay.
It's always like 9 o'clock.
In the morning.
Right?
It's
9?
usually 9 a.m.
Okay. I think I can, and you said it's quarterly.
It's about quarterly. They started out thinking we're gonna do this
One
monthly.
meeting a month.
You've all fallen for that before. So it's working out to be
Quarterly-ish.
about quarterly-ish.
Sure.
At the most 5. Last year we maybe had 5 or 6
Okay.
meetings. This
I
year
can
we
do
haven't
that.
started yet, so we're already kind of behind.
Okay, I
So-
can do that.
Okay. Do you wanna have a motion?
Oh, unless anyone else is interested, I certainly don't wanna steal someone's thunder here. If there's someone else who would be interested.
All your thunder.
Look at everybody raising their hand.
Okay, so I'll make that motion that Mary will be the tech center
RAB member, Regional Advisory Board.
Okay, advisory board member. I'll do that by roll. John,
Aye.
Miranda,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Arlene,
Aye.
Emily,
Aye.
Zach,
Aye.
Mary's an aye.
Kat also was the policy committee backup for Lisa. And Lisa, you're gonna have to help me remember. I think there was it certain months she was planning to cover for you? Was it during the legislative session?
I think it was gonna be random. I would just tell her when I couldn't make it. There were a couple recently that I think I couldn't make. So going forward, it's pretty random. Sorry.
And if there's someone that has interest in that, that is the second Wednesday of every month at 3:30 to 4:30.
We changed it.
Third Wednesday of every month. I can't keep up. They just tell me where I'm supposed to go on any given day, and I go there. Third Wednesday at 3:30, and that's virtual. 1 hour, usually.
And
Like my usually.
usually
That's a difficult time of day
Yeah.
for working people.
Yeah. And this is something, I mean, this is not a required piece. Like, this came up, I think, on this board. Lisa, I think it might have been your recommendation to have someone serve as a backup. But it isn't something that we're obligated to do. If Lisa can't make it, she'll still get the minutes.
Yeah.
She'll get to review in advance if she wants, and she can give feedback. So if there isn't anybody that wants to do it, it is an okay one to not fill.
I appreciate how many years you've done that, Lisa.
Mhm.
You've been really steadfast in your commitment to the policy committee. It's much appreciated.
Thank you. It's very interesting. So I highly recommend it to anybody who wants to try to make it work.
She's so funny.
And then the final is Kat serves on the SU board.
Correct.
So that's a seat we do need to have filled by
Yes.
someone on this board.
What's that acronym? Remember, I'm.
Thank you for
Sorry,
saying that, I
the
forget
supervisory
about that.
board.
Oh, yeah, no.
So that combines, we have 3 representatives from the NMV board and 3 representatives from the ER board. And we meet on the 3rd Wednesday of each month.
Most
Occasionally it's the 4th, occasionally, but right, when we have those 5-week months.
Most of the time it's the third.
Yeah.
The third month, the third Wednesday of most months. So
yeah.
I say most because there's a little break in the
Right.
winter months.
Usually it's
Mostly.
through January and then we meet in April.
Yeah.
And we don't have those in between months.
But I would say in the last few years, that has not been the case because we are so, there's so much budget stuff that we really don't. In last winter, we had multiple SU meetings a month because we had special and
Right.
like emergency meetings.
Those are your regular ones.
Yeah.
If we come into something like, I don't know if it would potentially, I don't think we'd have to come back together we could potentially have to come back together to ratify a collective bargaining agreement or budget stuff. We can't predict that part.
And those meetings we do at the central office in Enosburg at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Or soon.
And currently, Kat is obviously stepping down and Emily and I are the remaining SU reps.
I would just ask about the acronym.
You just raised your hand.
No way.
Oh,
It is a really excellent opportunity to kind of get that high level view of the work that the whole system is doing. And, you know, there are a lot of things that fall in the SU realm that are, you know, specific to this whole system and not the individual districts, and a lot of kind of vision work and portrait of a learner work and curriculum stuff. We meet with our entire central office, or most of the central office. Team directors get to hear what DEI people are doing with the LEAPS, food service, our building and grounds people, curriculum, early ed. So it's a great insight into the system as a whole.
How often again?
Well, once a month, 3rd Wednesday, and then occasionally special meetings as needed.
I'm trying not to laugh.
Yeah. Because there's no special meetings.
With the
Last
budget
year was rough.
situation last year, it was a heavy lift as far as the kind of complexity and the time commitment, for sure.
There is a virtual option.
Oh, sure.
there is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, people zoom in for sure.
It's not that bad.
You said that.
With a twinkle in her eye, she says that, yeah.
Okay, nice.
All right,
Okay.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank
you,
Excellent, Zach. Okay,
You
so
won't
I'll make
regret
a
it.
motion for Zach to join us on the SE board. We'll do that by roll. Miranda?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Arlene?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye. Welcome aboard.
No longer to sit here until somebody cares.
All right.
Now you go tell Katie.
Excellent.
Yeah, I know, that's what the home she's at.
Any other
went all
business
night because
anyone
nobody
would like
was
to
at
attend to this evening? All right, well, I'll make a motion then to adjourn. Safe travels home, everyone. Thank you so much.